The opening scene of a story is perhaps the most vital one for a writer to get correct. The style in which it's written and the content it contains is what's going to decide whether a person continues reading your story or not. It also sets the tone for the entire story, which in itself will be a major factor in determining whether the reader sticks with it. So when Erin Hunter opened Into the Wild with a midnight skirmish between two rival factions of wild cats, they established a dark and gritty tone while also teasing the prospects of a conflict on an even larger scale. However, the reader at this point doesn't know anything about what's going on. They don't know who's fighting or why or what the stakes are. This scene, unlike all subsequent ones in the novel, is delivered by a third-person objective narrator, and as such, the reader doesn't yet have leanings or stakes in either side. With this being the case, the writer needs someone to grasp onto and guide them through the scene, or else they'll be left confused by the action being conveyed to them. After a couple brief and disorienting paragraphs, Erin Hunter centers the scene on one character. At the center of the frenzy of fur and claws, a massive dark tabby pinned a bracken-colored Tom to the ground and drew up his head triumphantly. "Oakheart," the tabby growled, "how dare you hunt in our territory? The Sunning Rocks belong to ThunderClan." "After tonight, this will be just another RiverClan hunting ground," the bracken-colored Tom spat back. The Dark Tabby's heroic declaration is the first line of dialogue from Into the Wild. Following Oakheart's response, immediately we can understand who the two sides are and why they're fighting. This is a territorial dispute between ThunderClan and RiverClan on land that currently belongs to the former. Through this quick but natural exchange between two characters, the entire scene is given context, which the reader can then use to get invested. RiverClan is the aggressor here. Furthermore, the first ThunderClan warrior we meet is passionate and dominating, while the RiverClan one wriggles under him like a snake. The nature of the fight and the way in which the scene is presented makes the reader more inclined to back ThunderClan, which is exactly who you're supposed to. Just subtle things like this can go a long way in writing or in a visual medium to manipulate the way a reader or audience member feels. It's through the words and actions of this dark tabby that you initially connect with the brave and heroic members of ThunderClan. However, this is actually a trick. This character, as we later find out, is in fact not somebody we should end up rooting for. The dark tabby cat is actually Tigerclaw, the primary villain of the entire series. The way he's introduced to the reader in this scene is really unique because you're meant to immediately connect with him and like him. But then later, the exact opposite is the case. It completely subverts the way in which characters like this are typically portrayed. Usually a writer will introduce a villain by showing them doing something bad. The nature in which this type of character is first presented in a story has important implications for how they're perceived. It's an easy way to get the reader immediately invested in the struggle to oppose them. They do something bad and then you naturally want them to get their comeuppance. Ambiguity is often thrown out the window for better or worse. However, Erin Hunter introduces Tigerclaw in the opposite way, and the reason for it is actually brilliant. Tigerclaw is a brave and relentless fighter. He's a charismatic and inspirational figure, always ready to launch himself into a dangerous situation in order to serve and protect his clanmates. The opening scene even includes a moment where Tigerclaw goes out of his way to save one of his fellow warriors. The desperate scream of a ThunderClan she-cat rose above the clamor. A wiry RiverClan Tom had pinned the brown warrior flat on her belly. Now he lunged toward her neck with jaws still dripping from his swim across the river. Tigerclaw heard the cry and let go of Oakheart. With a mighty leap, he knocked the enemy warrior away from the she-cat. "Quick, Mousefur, run!" he ordered, before turning on the RiverClan Tom who had threatened her. From the perspective of the reader, Tigerclaw appears to be a great and heroic character. The way in which we spectate this scene mirrors the way in which his clanmates see him. This in turn relates us to and puts us on the same level as the other members of ThunderClan. We only see the outer good he displays, which is why it's so shocking when his vile, true nature is later revealed. The reason Tigerclaw is a villain in this series is because he's a power-hungry, treacherous tyrant. You, the reader, have been deceived, just like every other character in the book. So in the moment when Tigerclaw is exposed, you have the exact same reaction of shock and disbelief that every character in the book has. Now, it's one thing to be told Tigerclaw was this great warrior, or to see it later on in the novel. However, Tigerclaw is our first character. He was the anchor that initially brought us into this world, so the revelation that everything you thought you knew about him was actually just a manipulative facade stings all the more potently. Tigerclaw gets his second introduction introduction in this book. In the first one, he was introduced to the reader, but in the next one, the story's real hero, Firepaw, is the one who gets to meet him for the first time. Ensuring that we, the reader, are on the same page as the protagonist, Firepaw's first impressions of him are very similar. So at this point, Rusty has accepted Bluestar's offer to join ThunderClan and has made his way to the main camp, where he gets jeered by a snarky little prick known as Longtail for not having warrior blood. Rusty assaults him like any cool hero would do, and totally humiliates this worthless twat, further showcasing that heroic initiative and brazen, confident attitude that I discussed in episode 1. Following this display, Bluestar makes Rusty an official ThunderClan apprentice and renames him Firepaw. I want to really emphasize this, that every action these characters have builds their character. These scenes contain no filler from a narrative standpoint or from a character developing perspective. Nothing is accidental. Every move they make, especially Firepaw and Tigerclaw, either sets a precedent for their future behavior and or builds off their previously established foundations. This makes these characters feel fleshed out and organic. We can see them grow or revealed in a steady, natural way. I bring this up now because what immediately follows in the story continues on this same path. Tigerclaw's introduction to Firepaw both builds the outer perception of his character that was established in the prologue, yet also contains the first subtle hint that there may be more to him than we think. Chaos suddenly erupts when Ravenpaw, Tigerclaw's apprentice, returns to camp and declares that Redtail, ThunderClan's deputy, has been killed in another skirmish with RiverClan. He collapses and Tigerclaw returns to camp carrying the slain warrior's body and proceeds to clear things up. Tigerclaw says that Oakhart, RiverClan's deputy, killed Redtail, so he in turn killed Oakhart to avenge Redtail. Alright. Now, please note the dialogue given to Tigerclaw in this scene. He died with honor, struck down by Oakhart. I couldn't save him, but I managed to take Oakhart's life while he was still gloating over his victory. Tigerclaw's voice was strong and deep. Redtail's death was not in vain, for I doubt we'll see RiverClan hunters in our territory again. Jeez, is this guy running for office or something? Oh wait, that's exactly what he's doing. Since Redtail's dead, Bluestar needs to appoint a new deputy to succeed him. I wonder who she'll pick. Perhaps an honorable, powerful, fearless, charismatic, and highly nationalistic warrior? Well, what a coincidence. Tigerclaw's stock seems to be soaring right when the job becomes available. And boy, he sure seems interested in the job, judging on how he's listening on other cats discussing the position. It's almost too coincidental. This section serves to set a precedent for Tigerclaw's ambition. Now, ambition isn't an inherently negative trait, but the actions you take to feed that ambition can make it a very, very bad thing. All of this is once again subtly established simply by Firepaw relating Tigerclaw's behavior to the reader. Nothing beating you over the head, no alarms going off. You might not notice anything suspicious here. But your brain did. These passages lend especially well to subsequent readings. Once you finish the book and sequels and understand the full context of Tigerclaw's behavior here, everything just falls into place. You can appreciate this all even more the second time you read it because it's so carefully planned out. Before writing the main story focusing on Firepaw, Erin Hunter developed this background narrative and then inserted it into the main story. Think of it like this: the second act of Tigerclaw's story is woven into the opening chapters of Into the Wild and told through Firepaw's lens. Since we aren't being told Tigerclaw's story through his point of view, Erin Hunter had to convey it through his actions. So how does she convey that he's interested in becoming the new deputy of ThunderClan? She has Firepaw note that Tigerclaw is eavesdropping on political conversations. See what I'm getting at here? Subtle little connections? This is why I think it's a good idea to have stories for your characters planned out before you move on to the writing process. That way, the world and characters you create feel all that more organic. You genuinely feel as though you've stumbled into the midst of a developing power scheme.